Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. We will be talking today about how ScriptRunner scripts can be used to help with your structures. Before we begin, just a few quick housekeeping notes. As you may have noticed, all of the attendees have been muted. You guys will remain muted for the duration of the webinar, so feel free to chat with your colleagues. We have a Q&A feature that you should be able to find in the Zoom bar, and we would like you guys to use that to submit any questions you have. We're going to be recording all the questions, and we'll be answering them at the end in a dedicated Q&A section. If you can't attend, well, then you're probably not listening. And if you have to leave somewhere halfway through, don't worry. The webinar is going to be recorded, and we will send you an email afterwards with the link where you can watch it again or pick up where you left off. So, as you may have already guessed, I'm speaker number one. My name is Phil Haycoop, and I am a solutions engineer here at ALM Works. I will be joined today by the lovely Sylvia Nikova. She's the library product owner over at Adaptavist, and also by Sophie Connor. She's a product marketing associate also at Adaptavist, and she works with Sylvia on the Adaptavist library and the ScriptRunner for Jira add-on. We will be talking today about ScriptRunner and the Adaptavist library that Adaptavist has put out. After that, we'll be introducing a quick example structure, and we're going to be talking about how you can use some of the scripts on the library to manipulate the structure. And hopefully, while doing all this, you can learn a fair bit about the inner workings of structure and hopefully see how these examples that you're going to be seeing can be extended and modified to basically serve your purposes and your business needs. So without too much further ado, I would like to hand it all over to Sylvia.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Sylvia Nikova, and I'm a product manager in Adaptavist. As you probably know, the headquarters of Adaptavist is in London, where the current temperature is 40 degrees. And it is my pleasure to demonstrate some of the core features of Adaptavist's top hot selling plugin on the Atlassian marketplace, ScriptRunner. We all know that managing Jira starts to become quite difficult with lots of projects, workflows, and issues. ScriptRunner is the ultimate tool that unlocks powerful capabilities you didn't think were possible in Jira. It helps you match Jira to your business process using powerful automation. ScriptRunner provides Jira admin users with a unique set of automation, customization, and extension, which enable automation of recurring tasks, customization of Jira's look and feel, extension and control of Jira's behavior, integration and automation of tasks of other marketplace apps as well. And now I will switch to my screen to demonstrate ScriptRunner's most loved features. Right, I hope everyone can see my screen, and I'll start with the browse page, which is one of our most recent ScriptRunner features, which provide users with the ability to search via keywords or just use the filters in place to discover functionalities they never knew about. So for example, if you want to automate fields or automate or customize UI, you will see all of the built-in options which we have in place right now. Built-in scripts is a ready-made functionality providing powerful automation out of the box. A popular built-in script is switch user, for example, which allows the administrator users to temporarily assume the identity of another user with investigation, learning, training, or other purposes. Another popular built-in script is the configuration exporter. And that one export extension configuration information to a description, to the descriptor, the so-called YAML file. The YAML file contains information required to configure built-in extension points, such as listeners, hooks, macros, and UI elements. Listeners are powerful tools to execute a custom action based on an event. Popular listeners fires an event when true. This built-in script provides an alternative method for sending emails under certain conditions. provide the name of the event to be fired and the condition under which to fire it. This method lets you see the power of velocity templates as well. Another popular listener is send custom email, and this one is used to send a custom email, obviously, which is a listener functionality to send custom email in reaction to non-issue events, such as create a project, add a new user, update a component, third-party plugin events, and so on. Script fields feature enable displaying a calculated custom field on an issue. This is a replacement for writing a full calculated custom field plugin. You could use it, for example, to pull in data from an external system or to show some value that's calculated from the values of other fields. So examples in the context of structure use cases of scripted fields are show everything that is blocked through linked issues, breakdown of work lock by who locked the work, number of attachment and issues, number of attachment an issue has, sorry. And here you can see other built-in examples of script fields. REST endpoints help users define dashboard gadgets, for example, or receive notifications from external systems, plug gaps in the official REST API. Other popular use cases are get the user making the request or create priority object. Script fragments is a functionality within ScriptRunner which provides the capability to customize the web UI through dynamically adding script fragments. Example for script fragments usage are install a web resource or create a custom web section, show an announcement banner, or different admin type only banners, and also for users who are not logged in. Users can also add buttons to the tools menu for particular pages with script fragments. Escalation services automate issue escalation with ScriptRunner using a JQL query to modify issues based on elapsed time and enable actions such as transition to occur after a specified time has elapsed. For an example, if a task has been opened but not assigned to, for 7 days, you can set up an escalation service to automatically give the issue a priority status or send an email to notify the team. JQL functions is a tool for enhanced power searches, which provide users the ability to extend every ScriptRunner feature. In the context of ScriptRunner and structure for Jira, we have a few JQL functions and use cases around which are quite popular, like issue function in last comment and issue function in linked issues. Within the library collection of ScriptRunner and structure for Jira, you can also find scripts for insert issues into a structure using a JQL query, remove issues from a structure based on a JQL query, add a JQL filter to a structure, and extend a structure with all issues under an epic and include all LinkedIn issues. Another functionality which I would like to present you today is workflow functions. So workflow functions are, you navigate to workflow functions in a slightly different way, not within the plugin, because this is part of Jira core functionalities, which ScriptRunner extends. So ScriptRunner for Jira allows administrator users to further customize the configuration of workflows using scripted workflow functions. ScriptRunner powers up Jira workflows with script conditions, validators, and post functions. Now I'm going to demonstrate you how we do that. Right. Just pick a random transition, and here we go. So conditions are responsible for allowing a transition if a custom condition is true. Examples for conditions, built-in conditions are block transition until approval, which blocks issue transition if there is a pending approval. Users in a custom group condition allows only users in a custom field specified group to execute a transition. There is a example of condition within our collection, ScriptRunner and structure for Jira, which is all descendants must be resolved condition. And now I'll go back and I'll demonstrate you validators. Right. So validator checks for validating issues after they have been changed in a workflow transaction. You can validate that changes to multiple fields are coherent according to your business processes. Likewise, attachment, issue links, and parent-child relationship. Our most probably popular validator is permissions validator, which validates that the user has a permission, but you also have a scripted validator, which allows you to do your custom validators. I'll go back and show you post functions as well. Post functions execute an action after a workflow transition passed successfully. Example for use case examples for post functions are assign to current user, which assigns the issue to current user if the current user has the assignable user permissions. Send a custom email allows sending emails after a transaction to support your business processes as well. And in the context of ScriptRunner and structure for Jira library examples, we've got add issue to structure on transition post function, which adds the current issue to a name structure. You might want this done automatically when the issue has been triaged. And another example is add a separate issue to structure that shows escalated tickets from service desk on escalation. I would like to also demonstrate you behaviors. So once again, you navigate to behaviors from the Jira menu, not within the ScriptRunner plugin. So behaviors are functionality that allows an administrators to create one or more behaviors. A behavior defines how fields behave for issues in a given project or issue context. Some examples of behaviors are making a field mandatory depending on other data entered on the issue screen during an issue creation or an issue transition, making a field read-only dependent on user role or group, doing server-side validation of field data before the issue screen is submitted, setting a field value dependent on other issue screen data. And going back to the core ScriptRunner for Jira screen, I would like to just say some words about the script console or script editor. We use the script editor to simplify the process of writing scripts in ScriptRunner. The browser-based code editor provides completions, Java doc lookups, and parameter assistance using 4 simple keyboard shortcuts. An example of ScriptRunner and structure collection, which is executed in the console, is show all structure boards and corresponding item counts. That could be found on the library. And now I'm going to show you the Adaptavist library before I wrap. So Adaptavist library is a large collection of scripts, a resource where users can search and access ready-made functionality, copy the relevant code, and execute it inside of ScriptRunner and Adaptavist apps in the future. So right now, Adaptavist library's content is primarily focused on ScriptRunner for Jira. We are working towards offering a next level automation solution for our users through the ScriptRunner library integration, which will enable search and discovery of library scripts within the ScriptRunner plugin and injecting them with a single click. And with this, I'd like to hand over to Phil, who will give you a cool deep dive within the world of structure for Jira. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Sylvia. Before we dive into that, I would like to quickly go over some basics of structure. So for those of you who don't know, structure is a visualization tool for your Jira issues and the issue links. And one of the most powerful features inside structure is the use of the automation. The automation is the ability to add rules that show you that are followed by structure to generate the content that you see. And we're going to be manipulating both the automation rules, the creation of the structures itself, but also, for example, showing different information inside the columns that you currently have visible. And we're going to be doing this using our API, which is are all the program methods and functions that we have available in structure. These are publicly accessible through our website. You can go there and find the link to our API, and you can literally read every piece of code, every function that is available, and it gives you a lot of useful resources. But because we don't want to throw everyone to the deep end, I'm going to take you guys through a programmatic tour of structure and what everything does. And in order to do this, I need to find my mouse. And I'm going to share my structure here. So as you can see, this is a very basic structure. I have one piece of automation available here, and is an insert operation that takes all the stories from a specific project. For those of you that are comfortable with structure, you can also see that I have the standard collection of columns and a few more, and I've called this collection the basic view. And in structure parlance, the collection of columns that are visible are called a view, and we're going to be customizing that later. And so I'm going to be going back and forth between the structure that you can see and the program or the script that we're going to be running here in the ScriptRunner console. And we're going to be taking the code that we have available on the ScriptRunner library collection for structure and tweaking it a little to make it work for the examples that we have here. So to start with, I'd like to walk you through the basics of this current code. Structure under the hood is both a structured data set and what's called a forest. So we're going to need the elements that you can see here. It's called the structure manager, which is a nice collection of functions that allow us to manipulate structure from a single central place. We're going to have the forest service, which is going to give us access to the data under the hood. And then obviously we're going to need some permissions to do this. So we're going to grab the admin level permissions here. Finally, I'm also going to be grabbing a specific structure. As you can see here, it's very creatively named test. That lines up with the structure name that you can see on the structure. And what we're going to do is we're going to call getStructuresByName, which is an easy function from our structure manager to grab those structures. And you'll note that it says structures with an S because it's possible to name multiple structures the same thing. So in theory, you could get a whole list of structures named test. And in this case, I just want the first one. So programmatically, that means the 0th index. And from that particular structure, I want the specifications of the forest. And then I want the source of that particular forest. And what that basically means is I'm going to get the data that currently builds this structure, and I want the raw version that's currently being shown. So I can manipulate this forest source and get multiple versions of the same structure. For example, if I add a different column, the underlying structure forest is the same, but I have a different specification for that particular one. What we're going to do in this particular script is very simply iterate over all the rows in this structure. So we're going to get the row manager, and we're going to iterate through it here and basically show for each row inside this structure whether it's an issue, and then I'm going to log that one this way, or if it's a non-issue, and then I'm going to describe it with this log. So if I run this particular script here, you can see here, there's no result because there's nothing returned. But because I've been doing everything in the logs will show exactly what it is that I've been asking for. And using the log warn functionality allows me to do a lot of debugging and testing from the script console to make sure I have the right piece of information. So what we can see here is 19 lines. The first one is a non-issue, which is a generator, which you can see here, which is a structure type generator. And it tells me the ID of that generator, which will be useful later. And then the rest of them are all issues and the issue IDs that are attached to them. And this makes sense to us because if I go back here, I can see the first row is the generator. And then I seem to have approximately 18 rows of issues. So if I were to change this structure, for example, if I group it by sprints, my structure changes. And so if I rerun this script, my output is different because I grabbed the latest version of that forest. And so here I can see a series of non-issues. 2 of them are generators, different IDs. The original one I had before, 1308, and the last one, 1336, that I just added. And then after that, I've got sprint groups with IDs for each sprint, the issues inside them, and then at the end, a no sprint folder, which again makes sense because right here I've got a series of active sprints and a backlog folder towards the end. So this is useful just to be able to query and look up what's in my structure, but also it gives me the IDs, which are these numbers afterwards, that I can then use to manipulate the structure further. So if, for example, I grab a new script, and pardon me while I find this script, I'm going to start working with a single generator. So I'm going to put the script in here, and these will all be available in our collection on the library. So if you want to play with them moving down the line, by all means, have access to them. We have the same simple starting point, which is just to load up a lot of the UI help and the classes of structure. And what I'm doing now is I'm going to grab my admin user and go with the same structure manager and forest manager, but also get the generator. And this generator manager allows me to do exactly what that describes. I'm going to start getting the generators attached to this structure. So I'm going to get the structure, and then I'm going to go and get the generator by that ID. And I know I have the ID 1308 and I've got 1336. So if I run this with this ID, I can get the module, the owning structure, and the parameters. So when I run this one, again with the logs, I can see the structure's name, the ID, and I can see what type of generator it is, what the structure ID is that it's attached to, which lines up here. And most importantly, and most useful for connecting this, is the fact that I can now see exactly what the parameters are that have been passed to this generator. So this is a great way to build something programmatically, deduce what the generators are and how it's defined programmatically, and then be able to manipulate this and use it further down the line using the ScriptRunner functionality. If I did the same thing by going to 1336, which was the other generator we had, I can once again run it, and now it'll tell me it's a grouper and it groups by sprint. And these are the parameters that were passed to it when that structure generator was added. Now all this is really great because it gives me a lot of the information that I want. So if I wrote this down, I could then go to the structure library, or sorry, the ScriptRunner library with the structure collection and go, for example, to the script that describes creating a new structure. And I can take this and create a new structure and pass the correct parameters. So what I can also do is take an existing structure and add new generators to that one. So I have this structure with the group and sprint parameters. So I'm going to remove those. So my structure is now empty. And I'm going to go and add another script. And I'm going to create a generator here. And as you can tell, most of my script So most of the lines have been repeated each time. I'm going to be importing the right methods, but everything else is very familiar. I'm going to use the structure plugin. I want the structure components module loaded, and I want the test name structure. And in this case, I want, because I'm going to be using a JQL query, I'm going to write down the JQL query I want. And I can manipulate it if I want. So let's get a different project, and I don't want just stories, I want all of them. So we're going to go through the structure manager, the forest service, and the generator manager. And then I'm going to grab the structure and the structure's ID. I'm going to put the parameters in what's called a hash map, which is a nice little way to relate the parameters to the actual values inside the parameters. And in this particular case, I'm going to create a JQL inserter. And then this is where the magic happens. I'm going to add this. So I'm going to create the generator. I'm going to tie this generator item to the forest right here. And then I'm going to add it to the forest right here at the bottom. So I have the forest source, I have the generator item, and I'm going to do, in this case, what's called a forest action, which seems to be cut off. Let me add it. There we go. We can do forest action, so I can add, in this case, that generator item. And I want it to be on row 0, below the 0th row, and at the 0 level of indentation. And all the specifications for all these methods and all these functions are obviously available through the API. So if you want to change this and manipulate an existing structure, you would add forest action, delete, and then find the generator item correctly, and then run it. So in this case, if I run this, I can see a result. But I can also go to my structure, and if I reload it, I can see that I have now inserted exactly all the issues that I previously said I would insert. So all the issues assigned to this project. However, moving the automation is great. We can do this with all the other types as well. So if we go to the library, you can see the other types of automation available as well. So I can do sorting. I can do extending. There we go, extending. So all these things work in the same way. So once you kind of get an understanding of how it works and play with the API a little bit, you can basically create a structure programmatically. And what you can also do, which we see a lot in different companies, is create many structures programmatically. So you could work, for example, create 50 structures and change each one differently. So you could iterate over a list of projects and have each structure reference a different project. So that's one useful thing to do. Now, on top of the automation, most of you are probably familiar with the concept of quick transformations. So this will give me the opportunity to use the same functionality that powers the automation, but locally. So these are things that I can do to change the current perspective I have on the issues without necessarily changing the underlying structure that other people have access to. So in this particular case, if I take all these issues and I can group them by status, I can see them grouped by their different statuses without necessarily affecting how other people are looking at them. And I can obviously change these quick transformations, which are saved transformations, by going there and either editing them or deleting them. So if I change the configuration here to be 3 groups, and then, for example, I want to extend by the linked issues blocks, just to have an example, I can go to save as a quick transformation and it'll add it to the row. But I can also do this programmatically. So following the same method we were doing before, I'm going to go to the script console and I'm going to take the script that I have for this. And first, what I want is I want to see what the current transformations are. So here, when we go through our familiar setup, I'm going to get the structure manager and the permissions and get the structure's ID. And in this case, I'm doing nothing but grabbing the properties of this structure and getting the properties that are called quick transforms. So when I tie this to the correct one, so in this case, I've still called it test, and I run this, you can see here in the logs that I have one really long piece of text that describes how this works. Now, for those of you familiar with JSON, they know that this is what's called a JSON. This is the JavaScript object notation, which is a complicated way to store different types of information in different levels and different groupings. But what's important is I can see, again, the parameters and the values attached to them for each individual quick transformation. And if I want, I can then create a new quick transformation and use this quick script to get that one specification out here and then copy it for manipulation and passing it on to all the other add all these quick transformations to the other structures. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to go back to my script console, and I'm going to configure my quick transformations. And the example we have on the library essentially resets the quick transformations to where they were originally. So in this case, again, I'm getting the structure ID, and these are the quick filters. So I've got one that does the JQL resolution is empty. I've got another one, JQL by assignee. And in this case, I've changed the assignee to on solo, and I've assigned it to solo. I can obviously change this if I want. So I can set this to Chew, which is a variable I've written at the top, which in case I'm gonna assign this one to Chewbacca. That's another variable, or sorry, another user I have on this instance. And then the other ones are also fairly simple. I'm going to be grouping by assignee. So it's called by assignee, group by status, and group by fixed version. And I'm going to convert this JSON into a piece of text, which is called a string. And as I did before with the get value from the property service, I'm now going to be setting this value. So I'm going to overwrite what's currently in this value with my new one. So when I run this script, again, no result, no logs. But in this case, if I refresh my structure, I should see a different collection of quick transformations available. So we know the familiar by assignee and by status, and I can see here, I've got my assigned to Chewbacca. And it highlights all the issues assigned to Chewbacca. So I had the ability to create not just a structure with a specific set of automation, but I also had the ability to script the extra kind of functionality, the extra views that you can see of your structure for my users. So as a project owner or project admin, I can do this and enable the rollout of structure much more easily by giving them a simple UI that's similar among all the projects, but I can customize it if I need to for each individual group. So this gives me an easy way to roll out structure to different people, give them a uniform UI, and when they ask me something, I can point to the same thing, and I don't have to necessarily learn 50 different customized structures. Finally, the one thing I wanted to talk to as well is the ability to add different columns. So right now I have progress, status, assignee, and several others. And I've called this the basic view. And similarly to before, I can get the view specifications, which is also a JSON object, using the ScriptRunner console. So I'm going to find it here. And this is probably the shortest script to date because the views transcend the structures. You can get a view associated with another structure, but they are essentially not tied to one, not like the quick transformations. So all I'm going to do here is get the view manager and grab a specific, or get all the views that I have permission to see. And since in this case I'm the admin, I'm just going to see all of them. And so once again, when I go to the logs, I see a long collection of different structure views. I've got the one called basic view, which is number 10. I've got 15, which is the compact one, 116, which is called demo view, and et cetera, et cetera. So this means I can actually take a view as a starting point and create a new one based off of it and add or remove columns as I want to. So in order to do that, we're going to, once again, go to our handy dandy script. And paste the new one. Now this is a little longer, but we're effectively doing the same thing. We're getting the structure plugin, we're going to be loading it, we're getting the right permission levels, and in this case we're getting what's called the view specification builder. And that's another one of those handy compilation or methods that has a lot of different things that can all go together. So in this case, the view ID is what I want to look at. So I'm going to grab basic view number 10, change that. And now I'm going to get that view based on its view ID here. And I'm going to get a new specification based off of that one and create what's called a view specification builder. And that allows me to do simple things like add a column. So I'm going to add a column here. In this case, it's going to be a story points column, which in this case I've named all caps story points. And it's referenced by a field because it's a built-in Jira field. And it's a custom field because it was added to Jira later. And I can look up in the admin what exactly the different custom field IDs are. And they will look like this. And then I'm going to add these parameters, so the name and the parameters, to the column builder. So now what I have is I have a view and I've added a column to it and I've given that column some parameters. Now I'm going to make that a separate view by calling that the new view. And then I'm going to do some things here, which I'm going to name the view, in this case, cool new view. And I'm going to set a description. I'm going to set an owner. And these are all things that kind of are needed by default. Some of them can be omitted, but the important one to remember is the save changes. That means not only did I create this, but I actually saved this for later use. So right now we are using the basic field. The basic view has story points column, so let's get rid of that. And let's get rid of this one. And let's get rid of the icons as well, just to make sure it's different. I'm going to save this view as basic. So I've got progress, status, and assignee. And so when I run this, I should have progress, status, and assignee, and another field named story points all caps added to it. And when I run this, I can see that this view has been created. Now, just because this view was created doesn't mean it was added right away as the default view that was assigned to this. So I'm going to need to refresh my structure. And then from the views menu, I can actually go and find cool new view. And when I click on it, it becomes active. And we can see progress, status, assignee, and story points in all caps. So that covers basically the ability to manipulate structure in a number of different ways. The main ways that we see a lot of people wanting to customize them. We can add and remove automation. We can create a new structure to do this with or build it off of an existing one. We can add quick transformations to a structure to enable different people to actually further manipulate and get the information that they want out of our structures. And finally, we can actually add different views because the views as a collection of columns allows us to look at the data from a different angle, because in this case, I've got the planning view, I've got the tracking view, which gives us different collections of data of the same issue set. So it allows us to look at the data from a different angle, from a different perspective. So that covers what I wanted to talk to you guys about in terms of the structure ability to manipulate. And all this is accessible through the ScriptRunner plugin. Using the ScriptRunner console and our API, you can do a lot of these really cool things. So I'm going to try and find our presentation. Go back to Keynote. There we go. So what do you do when you run into trouble, which is inevitable? And because all these scripts live on the library, the folks at Adaptavist have kindly offered to be the first line of support. So if you have a problem with one of the scripts, whether it's the one that's structure related or any of the other ones that you're trying to manipulate, the Adaptavist support portal is probably your first point of call. If you have questions about more conceptual things, which are things like, can I do this with a script, or is this information available through the API? Then you can probably find us through the structure or the ALM Works support portal. That having been said, I would like to open the floor to any of the questions that we have. And for that, I'll introduce my colleague Alexis, who will be moderating the Q&A.
Hi, everyone. We have a lot of questions that came in. The first question goes to Sylvia. Do you have some pages where examples are placed for calculated fields?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. And I'm gonna have my colleague Damiano answer this question.
So yes, we have example for calculated fields in our ScriptRunner documentation, and also you can find example on the script library. So you have all the example that you need.
Is there any specific use case which you're looking for, or just to see what's available?
I think it's just a general question on what's available, probably to get some inspiration on the power behind the scripted fields.
Cool. Then in this case, just use the browse page of ScriptRunner and select the filter of fields. And the other option is to go to the library and use the indexing in place, and you'll see all available options. If there is something that's missing in terms of use case, feel free to raise a ticket on the Adaptavist support portal, and we will look into it and we'll publish that script as soon as we can.
Awesome, thank you.
Also for you, Sylvia and Damiano, any options to hide the schedule issue from particular projects?
Yes, you can use script fragment and a particular script fragment called hide system or plugin UI element that allows you to hide a piece of the Jira interface based on some conditions. So you're able to hide an element only on particular project. And you can find more information on that on ScriptRunner documentation. Also, you can ask on the ScriptRunner support portal. We'll be able to help you in achieving this.
Awesome. We have 3 questions kind of from one person. I have a complex workflow and issue hierarchy that has a number of tasks within each epic and multiple tasks and subtasks linked to or in the tasks. I want to use structure to display the hierarchy when I look at the parent task or epic, as well as in response to a JQL query. The first question, it's probably a combination of both Sylvia and Phil. Can I use a signal structure for all tasks in the project and have ScriptRunner do the inserts at the correct level as issues are created?
Yes, if signal is single, you can actually do this exactly as you described. So you can actually create the automation in place, and you can add listeners, if I understand correctly, but I'll field this over to Sylvia to actually update any of that information should they need to be. So you can add a snippet that does the structure manipulation and tie it into any of the listeners. Right, Sylvia?
Yes. Yes, you can have a listener, you can have a post function. On specific event, you can run the post function that contains the manipulation for the structure. So you'll be able to achieve that.
Excellent.
The second question is for Phil. Is there a limit to the depth or number of issues in the structure?
So the answer to that is technically no, but you have that kind of control as the user. So you may have noticed in the insert operation, there's a limit field, and by default, you can insert 1,000 issues. But there, if you want and you know what you're doing, you can obviously remove that limit, and then there's no artificial limit. There is another performance kind of safeguard in place that prevents automation from running for more than 30 seconds. This is mainly in place to prevent adverse performance issues on the entire Jira instance by someone who misconfigured something. But there's no actual limit to how many issues you can put inside a structure. I mean, there will be obviously a performance, you'll notice the performance impact if you want to load 1 million issues, but there's no technical reason that you couldn't add 1 million issues in 10 levels of hierarchy. You just might have to be a little bit more patient than if you want to add just 100.
For the third question, can I show the portion of the structure below the level of the current Jira issue as a table on the Jira issue screen in place of the issue links and subtask sections?
That is an interesting question. I don't think exactly as you described it, but you can actually take a subsection of the structure that's visible with ScriptRunner and then place it somewhere else. I'd have to defer again to the experts on the other side of the ocean in terms of where you can place that with behaviors or something, but I'm not entirely sure. You can get the data at least. Sylvia?
Yes, so you can actually create a script field that renders some HTML code. So you can compute the structure data that you need, and then you can render that as a table. But it's a particular use case, so it's, if you open a support request for us, we'll be able to help you in a specific way.
Excellent.
This question's for you, Phil. How can we place the generator position through script?
So I probably breezed through that a little quickly, but one of the things are when you add the generator with the forest add method, you have to pass it 3 parameters. And these parameters in my use case was 0, 0, 0 because it was an empty structure. But what effectively you can do is place the place the generator based on its depth and its row location. So you can place it after a row, before a row, and at a certain level, if that makes sense. There are also other helper functions available, so you can actually do what's called a row builder and iterate through different rows and different levels just by adding the example there. But we'll have some of these examples up on the library soon. And otherwise, you can always send us a support request and we can go over it in more detail with you.
Great. Is it possible to have a script listener listen on data changed on the specific structure?
Yes, so not currently, but we are implementing a way for script listener to listen to third-party event. So if structure generates an event, then we will be able to actually listen to it and run some code.
So follow ScriptRunner's release notes, you'll be notified for sure with a blog as soon as we release this feature. We're working on it currently.
That's great. In which cases would you recommend using scripted fields versus formula columns?
In that particular, so scripted fields are probably what we would recommend in 2 specific use cases. One is when the information that you're trying to access isn't available as an attribute in Jira. And what that means is that it means it's not accessible in the formula columns. So what that often means is information that you want to persist and attach to that Jira issue regardless of a structure that it's in, because the formula columns are context dependent on the structure. So you can actually get different values for it based on how many extenders you have, if there's a group or active, things like that. So if the information you have is something that needs to exist outside of structure and needs to be accessible from the issue page, for example, you would definitely be using a scripted field. And finally, there are a few limitations of the formula language, which is called expr, such as calculating certain percentages, referencing third-party databases, things like that. Anything that's kind of outside that remittance will almost always be defaulted to the scripted fields. The scripted fields are much more powerful because they have more access than just the formula columns inside the structure itself.
Great. Performance-wise, would you recommend inserting structures into other structures? For example, when each contain about 50 issues and the upper structure contains up to 50 structures, so in total 2,500 issues, is that a very bad idea?
So the answer is an unsatisfying, it depends. If you only have 25 issues, you could probably get away with making it a single structure. The use case for inserting multiple structures into a master structure that I know of that comes across a lot is when you have a large master structure and you have a lot of people, whether they're POs or developers on the team, that need to have access to a certain subsection of it. You would create a new structure for just that subsection, and then instead of redoing that each time, so for each team, you would have 5 of those structures, for example, and you could load them as you need them. So that's much more efficient than loading the master structure each time. And then in order to let each team be able to manipulate their own hierarchy according to the way they do things, you could then import those structures into your master structure to get an overall view of it. Performance-wise, you will notice it versus, say, a single structure that does a few operations, because it will run all the generators in order. But generally speaking, you can usually use your best judgment when you understand how the generators work, whether you should be inserting separate structures, if that's just a more practical use case, versus if it makes more sense to create a whole new one for the large organization and then a separate structure for these sub-organizations, like the teams.
Great. Do you, to follow up on the hiding features question, could you use this to create a form of delegated admin access? That'd be for you, Sylvia.
So to create a form of delegated admin access, you mean that I might need some more clarification around that, to be honest, to be able to answer properly. But yeah, you can create a piece of the user interface, piece of fragment that are only visible to certain user. So it is possible, but I don't know if this solves your problems, your specific problem.
All right, well then we'll reach out to them after the webinar to get clarification and make sure that their question is answered.
Okay.
Okay. The structure add-on can be enabled for all users and projects in a Jira instance or for just a subset of users or projects. Does it have impact to the system performance when structure is enabled for all users? Do you have a recommendation? But in this case, they have 2,000 users and 800 projects.
So enabling structure for all these projects and users itself will have no difference in terms of performance impact. It's when these users start using structure that there might be a performance impact. The reason is a lot of users will see the new add-on in the ribbon and will want to use it. And if they aren't cognizant of the fact that they are making requests, for example, from the Jira database all at the same time, then this could get ugly, I guess is the best way to describe it. The recommendation we have, especially when you're starting with structure, is to enable it for all the projects if there's no security reason not to do it, and then start with a subsection of the users, and then roll out access as the users that you're going to be giving this kind of information and power to understand that what they're doing is accessing the database, so there's a performance hit there, but also make sure that they understand how proper way is to build structures. So that would be going through some of the documentation, maybe taking some training from a partner or from us. And then as people get better at it or more comfortable with it, you can roll this out to larger pieces of the organization. Another option you obviously have is in the Jira, in the structure admin section, you can limit the permissions of every user. So for example, not everyone needs access to create and alter generators and structures. So having view access for different people is much less of a performance hit than, for example, letting them all build their own structures. So we recommend that team members not necessarily have all the permissions to edit and manipulate the automation. Leave that to the POs and the PMs. And then kind of roll it out as people become comfortable with it. And as you, as the Jira admin, have enough control over that rollout to feel comfortable giving it to more and more people.
And that's all the questions we have. Thank you to everyone who has submitted. And for the one person we want to get more information on, we will be following up with you today or in the next 24 to 48 hours.
All right, just a quick note on ALM Works. For those of you who don't know, we make the whole structure family of products. That includes the extensions Gantt, Pages, and Testy. These build on the structure functionality and allow you to do even more. We work with, well, at this point, over 5,000 customers worldwide, and we are kind of one of the leaders in the Jira ecosystem when it comes to visualization and project hierarchies.
Hi, I'm Sophie and I work on the marketing for the Adaptavist library and ScriptRunner, as Phil said earlier. I'll keep this super quick as I know that you all probably want to go out and enjoy the sun, especially if you're in London. So just a quick note on Adaptavist really. You might only be familiar with ScriptRunner, but we actually offer over 25 apps across the Atlassian suite, such as Autoblocks and Project Configurator. These apps help you to automate, integrate, and extend Atlassian. We offer products across all hosting options, and we also provide world-class support to answer all of your questions. Damiano is part of that support team, so I can vouch for him especially. And we work with some fantastic brands. We work with over 50% of the Fortune 500, and they're at least using one of our apps. If you want to try any of our apps, you can also head over to the marketplace and get your 30-day free trial. Or if you haven't used the Adaptavist library before, then you can go and sign up there. There's some really exciting things happening with the library at the moment. Definitely over the next few months, you'll see some massive changes, and we're really excited about them. So keep an eye out for any updates. I think that's about everything. Just a massive thank you and shout out to Phil and the ALM team for hosting this webinar today. I think it's been really interesting and insightful, and hopefully everyone here has enjoyed listening to it.
Thank you, Sophie. So just to leave everybody off, this is the link to the library. So if you want to go play around with some of the scripts, head on over to library.adaptavist.com. And we have a landing page on our website or our wiki, alm.work/scripts, which will be covering the use cases that we have and the links to the individual library pages that have examples for those particular use cases. So with that said, from us in slightly cooler Boston, thank you for watching.